And you may wonder, well, that's a very broad topic, finding faith in our God today. Well, we'll see. First and foremost, there are 3 B's to every sermon. So a minister friend of mine informed me of this quite some time ago. Those 3 B's of the sermon are as follows. Be bold, be brief, and be seated. I don't know if that's necessarily all in the order that I just said. That's what I was told, and that's what you're probably going to get today. Minister and jazz musician Thomas Jones indicated that we don't fully find faith because we keep God in a box. And that goes back to the box that I showed you. When I heard Minister Jones say that about 5 years ago, I wondered what on earth he was talking about. You know, he said, well, we don't find our faith because we're keeping God in a box. He said, all of us keep God in a box. And it caused me to think, well, what does he mean? And he broke it down. He said, well, we keep him in a box until we're ready for him to be exposed or we think that we need him. Many times he's contained elsewhere, maybe in our thoughts, maybe in our hearts, or we don't verbalize it with others, but he is, seen as being contained in that box. And so I thought about that, and I said, well, you know what? Finding our faith today is more difficult than it probably was, say, 40, 50, 60 years ago, We previously talked about that container. Why must we find it today? Many of us have heard faith used in many different contexts through the years. The Beatles told us that they longed for yesterday. About 54 years ago, they told us that. I was a little toddler, not even and Broadway's Little Orphan Annie told us about tomorrow and how the sun will come up tomorrow and how we need to focus on tomorrow. But very few people talk about today. And that's what we're going to try to share a little bit with you today. We've also heard other musicians, such as many pop musicians, the late George Michael, who back in my time, when I was in college, that was considered a heartthrob, did a song called Got to Have Faith. So for some people, that was the first time that they heard that terminology. Okay? We have some beloved church members of ours who have a granddaughter named Faith. And in the African American heritage and in Kwanzaa principles, Imani faith is one of the strongholds of that key. So there are many different definitions. Webster's dictionary defines faith as belief, trust, and loyalty to God, and also something believable through convictions. The biblical definition you just heard a few moments ago through Hebrew chapter 11, verse 1, assurance of things hoped for, the convictions of things not seen. We realize that faith and hope complement one another. Oftentimes you hear ministers use them together, and sometimes there are some who use them apart. They say that faith and hope don't have anything to go together, but they do. When you think about it, they do complement each other in many ways. If you could think back to the biblical story of faith in the story of Joshua, when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt and they were on the edge of the promised land and Jesus sent the spies. Okay? Many of those spies went and they were like, oh no, there's nothing can be done with that land. We're gone, we're out of here. But there were 2 who returned with the faith and the ability and the hope to lead. And those 2 were, Joshua was one of those people, and Caleb. And eventually, years later, Joshua led Israel as a man of God because he had that faith. Even though he didn't know what Jesus was, so-called getting him into, he took that risk and he had that strong sense of faith that he was going to follow through and he was going to see what happened. And it ended up allowing him to be one of probably the strongest leaders that we see biblically. Faith and theologians and many scientists have said it is hard to often not feel the faith aspects of life. Okay? And some people have said, I was reading something recently talking about theological seminary students, and it was saying that many of them were searching for their faith. Even though they were studying the principles of the Bible and they were studying faith every day, they were still searching for it just like the rest of us. And that many of them didn't see the faith that we see oftentimes. They saw it in the Word. They were having some issues as far as seeing it not only in here, but also seeing it scientifically. And we've been hearing a lot of things in recent years about how science comes into play with religion in the universe. And so those are some of the things that's been felt in recent years. There's others, Thomas Brooms, President Carter, and David Gregory, among some people that you would not believe. I mean, when you think in terms of people who have expressed themselves and have actually written about faith, the primary text that we go to is our word, our Bible. But there are so many people, because everyone is finding their faith, as I mentioned. Several years ago, former President Jimmy Carter published a book on faith. Okay. Not only did he, but the journalist David Gregory published a book called How's Your Faith? So we see it on so many different levels and how that applies to us in our lives and why we're all searching for it, and we're searching for it today. Today we have quite a few obstacles in our way when it comes to that, okay? What happens is with those obstacles, not only do we live in a time where the word isn't accessible to everyone in the printed formation, and some people it's by choice. They'd rather read the Bible on their computer, or they'd rather read it on their telephone, or they'd rather read it as quickly as possible. So it's harder to find faith when you look out there and you see hunger, you see corruption, you see political upheaval, you see children being abused. I mean, you see people getting rich, unnecessarily out of their own personal gain. You see and the education system failing. You see so many things around us crumbling. And through that, it's hard to sometimes keep your faith, let alone find it, keep it. But every time you turn on the news, most of us, I know I avoid watching it 24/7. I mean, if I don't have to, opening up the paper, yes, I do that too, but, every time you do that, there are things in there that make you think, Lord, what is happening in our world? But you still hold on to Him and you still try to have that faith, because you know through Him it's going to allow you to be able to not only minister to yourselves, but to others as well. And so those are some of the things that we find that happen when we hold on to His faith and finding it today. What are some ways that you think people can find it today that may be different than they found it, say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Any guesses? Any suggestions?
Communications.
Pardon?
Communications.
Communications, okay, very good communication. And that says a lot about where we are today.
Our actions,
Our actions.
how we treat others.
Bob?
The internet.
The internet, okay, yes, we talked about that today in our adult Bible study as well. Yes, Kim?
Treat people nice.
Treat people nice, okay, all of those are very important. Those are ways that you can hold on to the faith and not limit yourself in finding faith for others. And this church is good about doing that. I can say that is one of our strongholds, is keeping people together and making sure that we are faithful, not only committed to God, but to ourselves. So in closing, I want you to know that faith is something that will waver at different times in your life, okay? And that's expected. But you always have to rely on that word, or rely on yourself, or friends, neighbor, family, to get you through those times when you feel that faith is wavering, or you feel that, hey, I don't know the definition of faith right now, okay? So there are some times that you have to do that. So in closing, I just want to say that He is always with us, and He's always allowing us to find the faith no matter what it's through, tumultuous times, good times, everything else that goes on. So again, I thank you, and amen.